Are you wondering if gluten might be contributing to your chronic pain? Are you maybe a little confused about what it is or why your sensitivity tests keep coming back normal, yet you still have symptoms? If so, you're in the right place. Because in this video, I'm going to answer all of your questions about what gluten is, how it contributes to all chronic pain conditions, and why your tests might be coming back normal. I can confidently tell you that the things that chronic pain sufferers are most resistant to changing actually make the biggest impact. And of course, I'm talking about diet, and more specifically, I'm talking about gluten. This is your small intestine under normal conditions. The black being, small intestinal tube that you're familiar with the blue being the inner lining. And that inner lining is really important. One, it's only one cell wall thick. So that single cell layer has to not only protect your gut against pathogens, but also has to facilitate in digestion. So when you consume food, your stomach acid helps break it down. Then digestive enzymes from your pancreas help break that food down even further. And once it's broken down far enough, now it can pass through those cells where they're broken down even further, and they go into your bloodstream as amino acids and fatty acids, the bare building blocks. Under normal conditions, you can see these cells are jam-packed together. There is no space in between them. And that is facilitated by something called a tight junction. So now there's a phenomenon in the small intestine known as intestinal permeability, or leaky gut as you might know it. And that's when we lose these tight junctions. So those cells start to separate. And there's a physiological, really good reason for this, but as soon as they open, they're supposed to close again. Gluten activates a molecule known as zonulin, which opens up, breaks those tight junctions and opens up the gap between those cells, but it keeps that gap open. And now this is a problem because when you start consuming food, that food doesn't have to be fully digested into those smaller amino acids and fatty acids to fit through the cells, because now it can fit between the cells and get into the bloodstream. And not only that, now bacteria and viruses, they can do the same thing. We've lost that defense mechanism. They get right into the bloodstream as well. So now we've got a whole bunch of stuff in the bloodstream that we don't want. Food that's not broken down far enough to be beneficial to us, and pathogens like bacteria and viruses which cause harm. And this is okay because our body's got built-in defense mechanisms in our immune system. So your immune system gets activated and the little Pac-Men come up and take care of the problem. That's fine, except for these junctions are staying open. So now we're just constantly creating more and more issues for our immune system, which means that the immune system is chronically activated. And this is how most autoimmune conditions actually begin, is this mechanism, which begins with your diet. Every time that your immune system gets activated, it responds by releasing inflammation, because again, inflammation is part of the healing response. But if we're chronically triggering an immune response, that means that we are chronically creating inflammation. This is most likely where the chronic inflammation associated with all chronic pain conditions is coming from. So hopefully now you understand why so many chronic pain conditions are autoimmune in nature, or why so many sufferers also have concurrent autoimmune conditions. They're not separate entities, they're all working together to drive your pain. And hopefully by now you can understand why gluten is such an issue for all chronic pain sufferers. If you've ever been told that gluten has no impact on chronic pain and that you don't need to worry about it unless you have celiac disease, that person didn't have all the facts. What we showed in the last video is that when you consume gluten, that contributes to intestinal permeability or leaky gut, which most people have and don't even realize. And when you do have it, you're unknowingly activating your immune system around the clock to neutralize the threat. Unfortunately, your immune system, which is designed to be attacking this gluten molecule, sometimes gets confused and starts attacking good, healthy tissues instead. This is known as molecular mimicry. Because despite the fact that gluten and your nervous system look very different to you and I, when you get down on a microscopic level, the proteins of these start to look similar, and now your immune system starts to attack your nervous system. So when you consume gluten, it leads to an autoimmune response. Your immune system attacking you, the auto. This then leads to nerve damage, which then creates more inflammation. And if you don't stop eating the gluten, this cycle goes on and on and on, and you're just activating more immune cells, which are creating more and more damage and keeping you in the chronic pain loop. By now, we've talked a whole lot about central sensitization or the gate control theory of pain and how it's contributing to your chronic pain. But what we haven't talked about yet is how one of your favorite foods might be contributing to it. That's right, gluten, that seemingly harmless protein, unless you have celiac disease, is actually contributing to your chronic pain through central sensitization, whether your doctor is telling you you're sensitive or not. And that is because of the gut brain connection. Throughout your entire gut, your stomach, small intestine, the large intestine, which I didn't draw, are hundreds of millions of neurons that make up your enteric nervous system, or what is known as your second brain. When you consume gluten, it puts your enteric nervous system under stress. See the last two videos on the mechanisms behind why that happens. And when that enteric nervous system is constantly detecting stress, it needs to tell the first brain that there's a problem. So your gut, via the vagus nerve, which connects the brain and the gut, says to your first brain, hey, we've got a serious issue here. We need help. Under normal conditions, your spinal cord puts up a wall, a gate, that prevents most information from traveling up your spinal cord into your brain. But when all of this is going on and that enteric nervous system is chronically activating and screaming out for help, we lose that wall, and all the threats, whether they are important or not, make their way through to the brain. Now your brain's overwhelmed. Every little thing is competing for attention, and in order to get your attention, it has to produce more and more pain. And this is central sensitization, or the gate control theory of pain. And this is why gluten, which is seemingly harmless unless you have celiac disease, is actually driving your chronic pain. If you have chronic pain and you have tight, achy, weak, and even painful muscles all the time, you probably blame it on overdoing it the day before. But in reality, you might have an absorption issue and it might be caused by gluten. Indirectly, through chronic inflammation and intestinal permeability, which we talked about in the last videos, gluten will decrease absorption of many nutrients, but it directly decreases the absorption of B12, folate, and copper, which are necessary for proper blood flow, nerve function, and muscle recovery. If you're one of those people that have ever had a B12 injection and you feel incredible afterwards, that's because it's bypassing the gut, so we bypass all those malabsorption issues. But regardless, these are non-negotiables. This is what human physiology is built on. If we just are not absorbing it, you can't expect anything to really work that well. So while this might not have been the cause of your chronic pain, it certainly is driving it. We just spent the last 4 videos breaking down the physiology behind why exactly gluten is so detrimental for all chronic pain conditions. But there's 2 things we haven't covered yet. What exactly is gluten, and why do tests come back normal despite there being a clear sensitivity? Gluten is a protein. It's found mainly in wheat, barley, and rye. And now you might be stopping and questioning because aren't proteins good? Well, not all of them. Classic example that everyone by now is familiar with is the spike protein found on the COVID virus. So with gluten, we have smaller protein subunits, glutenin and gliadin. This makes an individual gluten molecule. When a bunch of these bind together, it creates this matrix. And this is what gives wheat its structure and its stability. Back in the day, wheat only had this much gluten in it. But then bakers realized gluten was what was making their doughs stickier and allowed them to rise more and have more versatility in what they were baking. So they started hybridizing the wheat so that it had more and more and more gluten in it. And now that's why we're starting to see more and more gluten sensitivities versus in the past. Testing for celiac disease is one thing, but testing for a wheat or gluten sensitivity is a whole different game. And that's because a lot of tests are only looking for wheat. Well, if gluten looks like this, but the entire wheat molecule looks like that, those are 2 different things to your immune system, and that might not show up on a test. Luckily, a lot of tests do go deeper and test for alpha gliadin, except for alpha gliadin is just one component of the entire gluten molecule. And there's 4 different types of gliadins. So if you're only testing for alpha, you're missing beta, gamma, and omega. But then you can test deeper and look for glutenin. Again, just one component of the gluten molecule. If you're testing for all of this, you're not going to see a sensitivity to just that, but your body is. And then there's wheat germ agglutinin, which is rarely tested for with gluten sensitivity. So when you take a whole bunch of gluten molecules and create this matrix, now we get this wheat germ agglutinin, which is this sticky protein called a lectin. And lectins in their own right are highly inflammatory and highly reactive to people's immune systems. So if we're only testing for these 2 things, your tests might come back negative even though there's a clear gluten sensitivity because we're not testing for all these other things. So there you have it. Those are the main ways in which gluten is contributing to your chronic pain condition. And hopefully now you have the encouragement that you need to start cutting it out of your diet.